If you have a hard time with boundaries, how might your life be different if you could say no as easily as a joyful yes? I'm Love Coach Mariya, and for over a decade now, I've been encouraging folks to empower their compassion so it's big enough for ourselves as well as others, and so our boundaries can become healthier than ever. You're listening to Empower Your Compassion, and on this show, we'll be unlocking transformative insights to help you reconnect to your true yes, so you can say no from that more expansive energy and get more of what you want in your relationships and your life without sacrificing your compassion. Are you ready for more love? Let's grow. So I'm wondering who else has this issue. I will often find myself in some sort of challenge, and then I get a little bit stuck trying to figure out if I'm supposed to double down and try harder, or if I'm supposed to cut my losses and bail. This tends to show up for me in a variety of situations. It can be work related, is this job the right fit, or do I just need to fit better or try harder or upskill or be a little bit more tolerant. It can also show up in my business, trying out different tactics to get desired results. If this tactic isn't quite working, does it mean that I need to refine my approach, or does it mean it's not the right tactic? And it shows up in friendships and romantic relationships as well. If I'm having an issue feeling in alignment with a particular person, sometimes I'm like, is this a me thing? Is this where I need to maybe make an adjustment so that this can, work a little bit better? Or is it just a misalignment? Is it just not the right fit and we just part ways? I recently had an instance with that. Romantically, I was seeing someone that, seems promising. And of course, you never know in the beginning. There's that whole getting to know you period and checking in with yourself too along the way. How am I feeling in this? Checking things as well. Is this meeting certain standards for me? Do I like how I'm showing up? How do I feel about how the other person is showing up? And sometimes, again, I can get stuck in this I'm not quite sure, or I'm starting to notice a couple issues. But for me, one of the stories that I'll run through my head is I'll notice myself feeling that maybe it's off, and then I'll question that and I'll start to second guess myself. And I'm like, I have had a lot of dates that didn't go anywhere because it wasn't really feeling right for me. So am I being too picky? Maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's time to alter my standards a little bit, or maybe this is something that can be brought up and communicated about. And then my mind goes to all of the times I have done that and I have brought up some issues. And then that just creates more issues. And then it's do I maybe need to adjust my approach in the way that I bring up issues? And these are the thoughts that are spinning around in my head. And, do I stay? Do I go? Do I adjust this way? Do I adjust that way? And I'm going to tell you what I ended up doing. But first, I also want to just add a little bit more prologue. One thing that kept coming up for me in this internal debate was this thought. It was okay, this is going to be a great opportunity regardless of where it goes to practice, showing up in the ways that I would like to show up in a healthy relationship, and that I wasn't really able to in the last one because the other person couldn't meet me there. And the idea that I aspire to is to not state a boundary like it's a hard line and I'm not available for this, or even a total I'm out, I'm not even available for this relationship. So maybe it's not about the issue but about the connection altogether, and just be hey, this isn't working for me, peace. It's a unilateral decision. So it was I want to not do that. And on the flip side, of course, I want to not just contort myself and tolerate something that doesn't feel good. But I also don't want to even do something I have previously advocated for before and implemented as well, which is along the lines of nonviolent communication, where we state what we're noticing, how we're feeling, what needs are not being met, And then you make a request. Like, I'm noticing this behavior and I'm feeling this particular way about it because it's not really meeting this need or these needs for me. Would you be willing to try X? And that can just be the jumping off point where they might be like, I'm not sure if that's really a good fit for me either. What about, here's some of my needs in the situation. And you can invite that as well and make it a very collaborative discussion. Like, hey, this is what I'm feeling and kind of needing. And I was thinking this might be, a potential solution, but what are you feeling? And, let's collaborate and find a solution. And something that I've noticed, and I'm not dissing on that approach, but one thing that I've noticed is that when we make requests, especially early on, it's like, we make these behavior modification requests from people. And I've been on the receiving end of this, and I've also been the provider of this unfortunate outcome, which is where you receive this behavior modification request and at first you're like, sure, I can try that adjustment. But then you're like, all of a sudden like, oh, well, now I don't know if I feel like safe to just be myself. And now I'm questioning all of my impulses and second guessing, like, is this the right way to show up? And then you kind of shut down and you're like, oh, I don't necessarily feel safe to be myself. I don't feel welcome to just show up how I'm naturally inclined to show up. I do think that it matters how it's done, how the request is made, and that there's probably better and worse ways to go about it in terms of the desired outcomes. But in fact, that was a part of this recent dynamic where I had been adjusted a couple times, and then that was having me feel a little bit like stunted and in this flow of like the relational development, And then so when I was thinking that, well, maybe I would bring something up and make my own request, and then, we can maybe contort ourselves and each other just right to make it work. And what I landed on desiring to do, which is not what I actually ended up doing, but what I landed on wanting to do was just stop at the feeling part and not even get into the needs or the request, and just say like, hey, this is what I've noticed, this is what I've observed, like, the context of what the feelings are related to. This has happened and this is how I'm feeling. And I just wanted to share that with you and check in with you and see what you're feeling. And the idea was that, from there it would evolve in some unforeseeable way, like who knows what, I couldn't predict what would come up for him and then what that might bring up in me. And then it can become like a really purely collaborative type of exploration. And maybe the connection alone solves whatever issues I was experiencing, or maybe learning more about what he's experiencing changes how I'm perceiving the situation. Like, there's all kinds of different ways that it could go from there. And so it's a very much less controlling type of approach. I look forward to still practicing that one day. But at the end of it, I had several days to reflect, and my feelings over time kept evolving. And then, of course, the compounding time was part of the issue, which was also contributing to the evolution of how I felt about things. And at the end of the day, I decided that it was giving me too much anxiety to try and approach it in a way that felt aligned and productive. And also because what I found was that underneath it, there were too many other sort of issues that were starting to bud, that it just was feeling overall like a no for me. And that type of conversation that I would like to have one day is the type of conversation that you would have in a relationship that you want to invest in. And so ultimately what I decided was that I didn't want to invest in this relationship. It's not even a full-blown relationship yet anyway. And that was hard to determine for me because, like I said, I was also second-guessing myself and wondering, like, am I being too picky? Am I going to regret tossing this potential something out? And what I remembered was that, and this is something I've actually been talking a lot about lately, and I think it's because I've been needing the reminder a lot lately. I really believe that it's highly valuable in our formative adult years, like mid-20s to mid-30s, to question yourself, challenge your no a little bit, challenge your yes a little bit, do some introspection, like, am I feeling like I'm a no to this because I'm just scared of something that could actually be really good for me? Or am I a yes to this just because it's reflexive, or is this like a full-bodied yes? Just those types of self-inquiries I think are really helpful and beneficial. And it can become a habit, especially if you are generally a people pleaser, anxious attachment type, conditioned to believe that love is earned, and therefore growth is something that it becomes not just about healthy development, but about earning, and earning love specifically, and finding the way to become the person who's lovable. So for me, I did go through many years, probably more than necessary, of a lot of introspection and refinement and personal growth and development. And eventually I realized that I had probably surpassed becoming an expert on me, and that maybe it was time, and not just time, but like okay and perfectly appropriate, to stop challenging my no and to start being a yes to my no. And I realized that that was something that I really needed to do for my inner child, to become a yes to her no. And I went through roughly a year or so, I think, of pretty consistently giving myself permission to be a no to any no that came up, without questioning it, without wondering if it was fear or somehow self-sabotage or old patterns or whatever. I was just like, you know what? If it's a no, it's just going to be a no. And eventually, I think that I started to kind of backslide a little bit, as we tend to do when intention falls from front of mind. And that's why I think it's been coming up a lot for me lately, is that I'm falling back into those patterns of questioning my no's again, and reminding myself that, like, it's okay. It's okay to just trust your no. And so that's what I ended up doing with this new prospective partner. It was just a no that I was trying to make a yes. And I'm just, at this point, I've spent enough time in enough dysfunctional relationships that I'm not interested in trying to force something to work anymore. And in fact, I'm so disinterested in that even though it can get really lonely being single, I know that, there are some people who are very content being single, and not just content. I mean, I'm fairly content being single. I would rather be partnered, but I'm pretty content being single. And I know that there are some people that are actually like really happy being single. I'm not going to lie. There are at least some of them who I question if they're convincing themselves that that's true. But I do believe that there are at least some out there who are genuinely happy being single. I certainly was after my crucible, most difficult relationship for a while. I needed that time to like cocoon and heal and return to myself for a while, and it felt really good. But eventually, I wanted not only to have the companionship again, but I just really like being in the relational dojo, as I call it. I like being able to practice these things, like being more vulnerable and just stating how I'm feeling and seeing how that lands for them and asking how they're feeling, and not necessarily trying to control the situation. I really want to try that. I think the romantic relationship is a wonderful practice space for exploring our wounds, our triggers, and really all of the ways that we're not really loving ourselves as much as we could be. And I think that they have a lot of potential to heal us and help us grow and connect to ourselves more deeply so that we can connect to the other more deeply and can become this really beautiful synergistic partner dance. And so, yeah, I would still like to be in a relationship, but I'm not going to be in a dysfunctional one again. And if it means that I don't get to be in another relationship again because all of the healthy men are taken, then so be it. And I think that one of the things that's really helpful, kind of circling back to my initial inquiry here, when you're trying to figure out if the correct course of action when faced with a challenge is to double down and try harder or cut ties and change direction, I think at least one key bit of information that can help you with that decision is to be honest with yourself about what your normal pattern is. And I think for me, even though it's like my brain was having a hard time with it because, like I said, over the past few years, honestly, I've had a lot of dates that didn't go very far because it wasn't a good fit for me. Granted, there were some where I was interested and then they ghosted me, and that was fun. Sarcastically. But I think that the truth is that my problematic pattern really is contorting myself to make something that's misaligned work. And so that's what I'm a no to. If it doesn't feel like we're both on the same page, if it doesn't feel like we're both excited about each other, if it doesn't feel like we're both expressing curiosity about each other and, you know, all of the other checklist items, but I mean, like, we really have to both be on the same page and both be willing to show up for the other in relatively equal ways. And I think that that's a fair statement for any healthy relationship. And by the way, if you are in one and you're wondering if you can do enough work for both of you, the answer is no. Both partners have to be willing and actually doing the work. And for me, that starts from the jump. So if at any point it seems like, you know, we might be aligned on paper, but if in actuality we're not both showing up to the same degree, then it's a no for me. So all told, as most challenges in my life are, this was a wonderful learning experience. It got me closer to some clarity on what I'm available for and what I'm not. And I hope me sharing this little story and personal insight helps you on yours. If there's anything else I can do, you can go to explorelovingboundaries.com and book a free call with me, although I get it, we don't know each other. That might be a little too scary, too much, too fast. So alternatively, you can go to boundariesthatfeelgood.com. You can download a jam-packed free PDF that breaks down the Gates method I've developed. It provides a somatic exercise, a really important distinction for people pleasers, and even a few scripts to use for establishing boundaries without disconnecting from people. And while you're here, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share so we can spread the love and so you can stay tuned for the upcoming series I'm going to do on the Gates method. I did one previously over 5 guest episodes, and this time I'm going to do it over 5 solo episodes starting 2 weeks from now. We'll start with the G of the Gates method, which is ground in your body and your values. And in fact, next week, my guest Sarah Kidwell and I actually do get into some of the techniques we both like to use for grounding, as well as a lot of other great insights on how boundaries can support an aligned life. Wherever you're at on your journey, I send you love and courage. Namaste.